All right, three, two, one. We are recording. Hello and welcome to the Gonzo Experience Podcast. I am David Gonzo Mamano. So happy you're here today. So honored that you are sharing your heartbeats with me today. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of content, and you are sharing your life with me today. So first and foremost, I am honored, everybody. Thank you, Gonzo family. And I'm going to tell you that it is going to be so worth it today because I have a living legend on the show. I like that. Anybody calls you a living legend, Shep? I feel like you are. So you're a living legend.
My mom would be very proud of that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, have her listen. We could always use the downloads. But today I have a show, a prolific speaker, author, and trainer, consultant, teacher, really, and friend, Shep Hyken. Shep, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I have seen you speak at least 3 times that I know about. I was in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, for many, many years, and you probably have like an EO logo, tattooed on you because when I think of the EO circuit, you're definitely a big, ingrained in that circuit. You've been a great speaker for EO, and I would imagine YPO, et cetera, for many years. And
YPO, EO, I am still since 1994. I've been still a member. Wow. The Entrepreneurs Organization. And for those that don't know, it's a worldwide organization similar to YPO, Young Presidents Organization. Difference is we own the company and you have to do a certain number in sales in order to qualify. And I've been blessed and lucky to be able to hit that number back in 94. And here we are, 30 years later, almost 2000. Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Yeah, no, good for you. That's yeah. And when you joined, and when I joined, it was called YEO.
Yeah,
the young
they dropped the Y for
they
young.
Dropped the Y, and because you had to be 40 or younger to join, right? And then they got smart because they were losing members as they turned 41, and they said, well, we want to keep these guys. So
right. Would you remember what happened? So that was in about 2008 or 9. They switched and they said, now we're going to have, I jokingly call it OEO, old entrepreneurs, but they just said it's going to be EO. Or no, WEO, World Entrepreneur, similar to what Young Presidents Organization, when they graduate, they go to World Presidents. But that was the year of the recession. And all those entrepreneurs that were online and on track to do the minimum of $1 million in sales or more, depending on where you were and what the type of business you're in, they weren't hitting the numbers. And they had a conference, and there were far more people at the WEO conference than the YEO conference. And then the next year they said, let's just drop the Y and the W. We'll call it EO.
EO.
And actually, if you want, you call it EIEIO.
Yeah, those are for us older folks that remember that rhyme, right?
I think every kid, regardless of what generation they're in, knows about Old MacDonald.
You would think. I sang it to my kids, and my youngest is 10, so I bet you're right. Well, Shep, I have your bio here, and I don't want to take up the whole half hour to read through it, so I'm going to hit the highlights.
You know why? If it's good, get on with it. If it's bad, get it over with. So short is better no matter what.
You got some great highlights here. I mean, first and foremost, your core business is you're a customer service and experience expert, and you teach people, companies, all that great stuff. What we're going to talk about. I love your title. You call yourself the Chief Amazement Officer at your company, which is Shepherd Presentations. You're a New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. This is an incredible feat coming up. You've been inducted into the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame for lifetime achievement in the speaking profession, and that's huge. People realize, that's pretty darn big. You in 1983, you founded your company Shepherd Presentations, and you've worked with hundreds of clients, Fortune 100s like AT&T and Abbott Laboratories and American Express. Your focus is customer service, customer loyalty, internal service, customer relations, customer experience. What I know you for is your speaking, your high energy presentations, really great energy that you kind of, it's contagious, right? From the stage. Yeah, no, it's fabulous. And you even combine some humor and some magic.
Why not? Right?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I started as a magician when I was a kid.
Oh, I love you and Vern Harnish, right? Was it
Vern and I? Vern If you had Vern on the show, I'm sure you've had.
I've had Vern on, and Vern
Yeah.
is the founder of EO, folks, just so you know. But Vern was
Right.
a musician or a magician.
Vern is a guru. So Vern he rented my props so we'll go back to like when I was a kid doing birthday parties. I graduated working in nightclubs, and high school and college, I started to do corporate events. And even though I was speaking from almost the time I got out of college, I still love magic. And companies would say, hey, how much to do a magic show? And, if they're willing to pay the speaking fee, what difference did it make, right? And then somebody said, can you do anything like big? And I only had one big trick. Okay. It was the one where you put a girl in a box and I used my sister. Okay. I sliced her in 3 pieces. I took her middle out. I put her back together again. Okay. And so there was this company, you might know, they make Tylenol, McNeil Consumer Products. And they called me, and a production company called me and said, would you be interested in bidding on a project? We're doing a big show in Hawaii. And I don't know if I've ever told this story to anybody. So if it gets out, the folks at McNeil are probably now retired who hired me back then. But I was only like 23 years old at the time. And I was just starting my speaking business. But they said, we want you to come in and pitch this client on doing a magic show. And the last thing they wanted a car to appear on stage. So I said, okay. And the executives came in, and I was up against a gentleman named Harry Blackstone, who's a very famous magician. Young people probably wouldn't know who he was, but this guy was a legend. He died about maybe 15, 20 years ago. And the other one was a guy named Doug Henning, who is another famous guy. Again, passed away many years ago. He had a run on Broadway that broke all kinds of records with a magic show on a main Broadway theater. It was amazing. Anyway, but I'm the only one that showed up in person to do the audition, because they happened to be meeting in St. Louis, Missouri, where I live. I drove in my car with my sister with this prop, and I said, now let me show you a really cool trick. And we wheeled in this box in front of these people in a boardroom, and I did it, 3 feet from them, and they're going blown away. But can you make a car appear? I said, well, here's what I said. How big is your stage, and can it handle the weight of a car? Now I knew, because I love magic and I'd studied it, that you have to have a special stage that's going to hold a car. So I said, why don't we just vanish like the executive, and he reappears in the back of the room driving in the car. And so we sold it. But part of the deal was I had to have a bunch of other big tricks they couldn't just do like 2 things. So I quoted them a fee, which allowed me to go out and buy a half a dozen illusions, big tricks. Make a girl float in the air, make her vanish from here and go to there, me switch places with people. And so this comes back to Vern Harnish. Obviously, I stopped doing that over a period of time. And I had all these props in a warehouse. And Vern said, I'd love to do a magic show. He bought all my props.
Oh, my God. So
this was not even that many years ago, maybe 5, 7 years ago. He bought all my props.
Right. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, but you're still doing a little magic on the stage, right?
I still do magic. I practice magic all the time. It's my hobby. It's a love of my life. And I talk about a concept called creating a moment of magic, a positive experience for the customer. And it's natural that I can have some fun with the audience and do a tiny bit of magic. It makes sense. It's like when a speaker tells a story and then has a point. I do a trick. It looks like I failed. And I come back and I talk about how moments of misery, which are bad experiences, can be turned around. And, sounds a little hokey, maybe just talking about it, but when you do it on stage in the middle of the speech, it just works beautifully.
Well, it's great when the audience thinks you literally messed up, but then it's part of the act, right? So
yeah, and what's fun in an hour-long speech, I might do 6 minutes of magic.
Yeah,
but it's so powerful, the entertainment factor, any entertainment factor, tell a story, whatever. I go, how much of it do you think was entertainment? And they go, I don't know, like maybe half of it. I go, oh, that's what I want to hear, because that's the sugar that makes the medicine go down.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. And then it also separates you from everybody else. And I would imagine that's what you teach in a lot of your trainings is how can you make yourself memorable? What are you going to do, differently, to stand out? And like I actually, when I was younger, I dabbled in some stand-up comedy.
Yep.
And one of the things it's similar to what you're talking about. I would come on stage. They would announce me, Dave Mamano, and I would come on stage and I would be pretending to eat from a can of baked beans that was open, and then I would trip and fall, and the baked beans would go all over the stage. And I I made myself look mortified and people thought it was a mistake. And I messed up from the start. And then I would walk up to the microphone and I would say, well, I guess I spilled the beans. Stupid joke, right?
Yeah,
but they remember it.
Go back to your regular day job.
I thank God for whatever else I do. But 30 years later,
funny.
whatever it is, people remember that stupid joke.
But you know what? That's the kind of thing that stands out. And what you did is you decommoditize, which is what companies need to do. Everybody sells pretty much what everybody sells, right? If I want to buy, this phone, I can go to the Apple store. I could go to Best Buy. I could go to a number of different places. Who gets my business? The one that is able to separate themselves from their competitors.
Yep, absolutely. So speaking of separating yourself from your competitors, you are a New York Times bestseller, you're a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and you have a new book out, brand new, right? And it's called I'll Be Back. And I want to say it with the Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back.
I'll be back.
I'll be back. So tell us about that book. Why is it titled I'll Be Back? What's it about?
Here's the galley copy. For those that are watching on video, you can see it. But if you're not watching, you're hearing it. I'll be back with the subtitle, How to Get Your Customers to Come Back Again and Again. It's exactly what it sounds like. There's a difference between what I call a repeat customer, which, by the way, repeat customers are gold. We want repeat customers. But what's sacred is the loyal customer. What drives customer loyalty? And it's if you're going to give me perks like frequent flyer miles for flying on your plane, or a punch card that you punch every time I come in and get a sandwich, and at the end of a half a dozen sandwiches, you give me the next one free. You're going to get me back because not of a loyalty program. They call it loyalty program. It's actually a marketing program. By the way, nothing wrong with that. But if you can take it to the next level and create some kind of a connection beyond just a perk, you might win that customer forever. And so I came up with the title, not even thinking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, as I started writing the book, I go, I said, we're going to terminate the competition. And what we don't want is a customer to terminate us. And all of a sudden, the first chapter of the book is about how do you win an Arnie?
Oh, beautiful. That's great.
Yeah. And it was, I tie in, there's some great quotes from the man himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and great actor, great politician, great philanthropist.
Yeah.
Great businessman. And so and then even my publisher found the font that it's called the Terminator font. They actually have a font. I think it's not like it just looks a little bit Terminator-esque, if you will. A little
futuristic for its time, right? For the 80s.
Right. Yeah, it was in the 80s. By the way, the term I'll be back, if you remember from the movie, and a lot of people, even millennials and Gen Zs have seen the Terminator. When he said, I'll be back, he came back to blow the place to smithereens. Okay. But in the next movie, he said, I'll be back. And it was in a good way. And he's used that line in 8 other movies, completely unrelated to the Terminator. And it's been used, but it's fun. So people know the line. I've reached out to Arnold. I've asked if he would endorse the book. I've not heard back from him yet. The publisher is still waiting.
Yeah. Keep on trying.
You never know. But that's what it's about. And there's, I always put foundational concepts. We talked about a moment of magic. So that stems from a moment of truth. When a customer comes into contact with your business, they form an impression. It goes 3 ways. Bad, which I call a moment of misery. Mediocre or average, which is a moment of mediocrity, or a moment of magic, which is anything better than just okay or mediocre. And it could be huge, amazing, over the top, or it could be just a little better than average. But if you're consistently and predictably above average, even in the slightest bit, and your customers will say things like, I whenever I call them, I always get through quickly. They're always knowledgeable. They're always helpful. That word always followed by something positive. You're operating in that zone of amazement. And so that's in every one of my books. And then from there, we take off with, how do you create that culture? I call it the I'll be back culture, that culture that's customer focused. Recognizing that, there's a lot of chat bots and artificial intelligence that's starting to come into customer support. Well, that's actually a pretty good thing if it's done the right way. But still, at the end of the day, you can't digitize or automate a customer experience to create loyalty. There's got to be some connection. Now, there is a company or two that have done it. One of them's Amazon, and people are so loyal to Amazon. And you want to know why? 2 reasons. Number one, consistency. Like you're going to get whatever it is you ordered. You know, if there's a problem, they're going to take it back. But on top of that, they're constantly feeding you information. You've just placed your order. It's been accepted. The order is leaving the warehouse. Here's the shipping information. Your order has shown up. Here's a picture of it leaning up against your door. I mean, people love that information. And there's no reason why companies can't do some of that, if not even all of that, regardless of how big or small. But those are, those are things that are done by other companies that you can incorporate in. So there's lots of ideas like that in the book.
So a lot of the Gonzo listeners are, small and medium sized, entrepreneurial ventures, and they're not Amazon, right? But so what are some things that they can do that Jeff Bezos can't?
Wow. And by the way, I must add, is it okay to do a shameless plug right now?
Absolutely. Always.
I'llBeBackBook.com. And there's no apostrophe in ILL, because websites don't like that. I'llBeBackBook.com. And if you buy the book, even though it doesn't come out for a while, you get an instant download of the ebook at no charge. You get it right away, so you can start getting customers to say, I'll be back quickly. But to your point, I believe that entrepreneurs, smaller businesses, even medium-sized businesses, have an opportunity that is that really can push Amazon aside, but they've got to play the game the right way. There's a concept I call owning your mile, and that is a metaphorical mile. Depending upon the type of business you are, if you're a local business, what's your demographic? How far out do your customers come to see you? Let's say you're a retail store. Maybe, you're the only one within 2 or 3 miles before somebody sells something similar to you. Well, that's your opportunity to own that mile or own that territory. There was a client of mine, Ace Hardware. They had one of their franchisees down in Texas and had been there for, 30, 40 years. They were a multi-generational business. Store about 15,000 square feet. Not a huge store compared to Home Depot or one of the bigger box stores. And what happens is directly next door to them, directly next door, Home Depot goes up. And they are 150,000 square feet, 10 times the size. To make it worse, they outspend them in advertising 30-1. So what did this small little Ace Hardware do? Number one, they stayed the course. There was a couple of things they did that were interesting, but the most interesting thing for this audience is they pulled back all of their advertising. They said, we can't compete with that anymore. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to the kids' baseball teams and the soccer teams and the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Cub Scouts and Brownies. And we're going to go to the schools and we're going to make sure we sponsor their dances, their events. We buy their candy bars. We pay for their jerseys, whatever it is. They basically just cemented the relationship that they had with their community so tightly, in fact, that their sales went up after Home Depot went up next to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they just got more and more local, more and more old school.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what it is. I work with Trek bicycles.
I have one.
You have a Trek. Great product. Yep. And they have meetings every year where they bring all their retailers in. And the CEO interviews every speaker after they do their speech. And the question he asked me is, how do you compete against the big box stores or Amazon? And I said, compete. They're worried about you, because if you do it right, they're not going to get your customer. Yeah. And went on to explain some of the things we've already talked about.
Yeah, they can't do it. Well, I had another person on the show. You probably heard of him, Jeffrey Gittimore, right? And
buddy of mine. Yep.
How do you sell against these big conglomerate companies like Amazon, right? And he had a good point. He goes, Jeff Bezos is not writing a personal handwritten happy birthday note to your customers, right? Jeffrey Bezos is not taking out your customer for coffee or for breakfast. And it's talk about like what you talk about with Ace Hardware. It's just, what can you do locally that they can't do? Because at the end of the day, it's price and convenience is certainly important, but darn it, just good old fashioned relationships, they still count for a lot, don't they?
They sure do. But if you're going to get down to the basics, the relationship is key. You want to have an emotional connection at some level. I just wrote an article. It's going to be out in about 2 or 3 weeks. I write for Forbes weekly column, usually comes out Sunday mornings. And actually, not usually, it does come out, because they told me if it doesn't, they will fire me.
Well, there's some motivation.
True story there. So I got hired on probably in 2013 or 14 to do this weekly column. And the editor said to me, now, Shep, I know what you do. You're one of these speaker consultant guys, and I know you want to do this. So here's the deal. 52 columns a year, one a week. If you miss one, you're fired. Okay. So he retired. I guess I got an email from him maybe in the last 2 months, and he just said, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've only talked to him maybe once in that whole 7 or 8 year time frame. Anyway, back to this article. There is a cool app. There's actually two companies. One is called Upstreet, and the other one is called Bumped, Bumped. Upstreet or Bumped. They both do the same thing. Upstreet's fairly new. And what they do is, instead of the company giving you points or giving you a cashback offer, like if you go to Menards, I don't know if there's a Menards where you are up in Rochester.
Yeah, we call it Maynard.
Everything's 11% off. Okay. Yeah. But you know how you get your 11% off? You have to send a copy of your receipt with a form, and then they send you back a credit toward your next purchase at Menards. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. That's a marketing program, right? So what does some of these other brands do? And I'm going to tell you about the brands. McDonald's, Lululemon, Target, major brands that you've heard of, as well as smaller brands. They are now represented on this app, either Upstreet or Bumped. And here's what you do. You get a small percentage of your sales back, anywhere from 2% to as high as 8% on some brands, right? In fractional shares of stock. So how do you make somebody feel like they're connected to you? Make them an owner.
Make them an owner. I like it.
So I'm excited. I just wrote the article. I finished it this morning, so it's going to go live in a couple of weeks. But just for the listeners here, check it out. It's a free app. You download it on your phone. You put in all your information. They track with credit card sales, and you end up owning fractional shares of a company. And if you buy enough, you'll end up having more than a fraction.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are they? So it's Bumped, and then what's the other one?
Bumped, Bumped, and Upstreet. Now, I think I'm not sure if it's a .com or a whatever, but if you just Google those two terms. And interesting, in my research, 55% of North American adults are invested in the stock market, which means 45% aren't. And there's a reason for that. They don't know what to do, or maybe they aren't making enough money that they feel they can make impact. Well, here's a way to get more people not only to own stock, but educate them, because that's one of the things that, if you watch the video on Bump's website, they said one of the reasons we're doing this is for those, especially young people that have no idea really what it is to invest, they're learning, and it'll lead them to move on to bigger and better things. So there's a little bit of altruistic feeling during that as well.
That's excellent. So for a new business owner with not a lot of marketing dollars, what are some tips / quote unquote tricks that you can give some small business entrepreneurs that they can, some strategies, I guess, that they can do without spending a lot of money?
Sure. First, buy the book. No, but
I only said one shameless plug. Come on, Jeff.
Right. No, but all joking aside, I think the most important thing is that you hire people that are customer focused. And how do you know you're doing that? Well, there's certain behavioral styles that will that really lend themselves to being more outgoing and customer facing than others. There's certain backgrounds that people have. I interviewed Jim Bush, who at the time was the executive VP worldwide customer service for American Express. And he said if he had a choice of hiring somebody with support, call center type experience, who's talked to customers in the past over the phone in a call center environment, or the front desk clerk at a hotel for the last 3 years, he's going to hire the front desk clerk, because that person already understands the hospitality mentality. And now all you have to do is teach how that applies to the business. So hire the right people. Recognize that customer service is not a department. It's a philosophy, and everybody's involved, from the owner, CEO of a business to the most recently hired. That's an important one. Here's a great idea. Sit down with the team of people you have, whether if you've got a tiny company or a large company. Get a few people, up to maybe 10, 15 people from different parts of the company. Or if that's your whole company, bring them all together and say, let's journey map what it looks like for a customer to do business with us, and plot out more or less a line of every interaction point you have with your customer, and then behind the scenes, what drives that point, and look at each one of those points and say, what can I do to make that better? One of my favorite ideas is to, and this is part of the book. There's a whole process, but the second to last part of the 6-step process is to go look at the companies you love to do business with, big or small, doesn't matter. Could be a restaurant, could be Amazon. Okay. What is that you like about them? List what you like about them, but be very specific. If they're doing something like, I love that they send me an email once the order is placed. Okay. That's specific. Don't just say, well, I love that they send me emails. That's general, but when the order is placed makes it specific. And say, what is it that they're doing that we like? And then make that list of what you like and say, what can we use from that list to put into our company? Survey your customers. Ask them what I call the one thing question, which is, what one thing can you think of that would make doing business with us better? It's one thing to say, were you happy on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 or whatever, but tell me one thing I could do to be better. And if I hear enough people saying the same thing and I'm not doing it, guess what? There's an idea to make. And by the way, these people might already give me a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, now I've got an opportunity to improve on greatness. So there is a rapid fire number of ideas for you.
Excellent, Shep. Hey, super fantastic. We certainly could talk for hours and hours, but as we spoke about before with the ADHD of the common entrepreneur, I like to keep these around a half an hour. And
yep.
Believe it or not, we're already there. But I really want to thank you for being on the show and sharing your tips. And I'm going to give you another shameless plug. Your book, I'll Be Back. Buy it at illbeback.com. Is that correct?
I'll Be Back book.
I'll Be Back book.com. No apostrophe with the L. And of course, Amazon. And you're saying if you buy the book now, you also get a free version of the digital book?
Well, it's not a version. It is the digital book. It's the same book that Amazon will be selling for, I believe it's $15.99. The book is $24.95. If you live out of the country, there's a postage. But if you buy it from our website, we take the order. You immediately get an email with a link to be able to download that book into your Kindle, your Nook, onto your computer, however you like to enjoy books. They're online. And then once the book comes out, it'll come from either Amazon, Barnes & Noble, one of the retailers. So you'll still get the hardback version when it's out. But in the meantime, customers will start saying, I'll be back, hopefully more often than they are right now.
Well, Shep, I will have you back on the show. So you'll be back. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for the world. If people want to reach out to you, I have your info right here. I'll say it's shep@hyken.com. Can't be easier than that. And yep. Hyken is Hyken, shep@hyken.com. And the website is hyken.com.
Hyken.com. Yeah.
You got that before anyone else. So good for you. So
there are Hykens around the world that has said, how did you get it? And I don't even know who these Hykens are, but they're apparently relatives of some kind.
It's like Smith in the Ukraine, right? I mean, well, Shep, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and I wish you continued massive success.
Well, thank you. And the same for you, and be amazing and stay healthy.
Excellent. I want to thank all the Gonzo family listeners as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this great interview, and make sure to stay tuned every Wednesday morning. I have a new episode out every Wednesday morning for almost 5 years now. Pretty incredible. Love doing the podcast. And again, appreciate you being part of the family. Make sure to download, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we hope to see you every week, every Wednesday morning. Until then, stay awesome.